I never thought the hardest battle I'd fight would be in my own living room. But there I was, standing in the doorway of my house in Riverside, California, on a Thursday afternoon in September, watching my wife Rebecca pack her bags, while my best friend since boot camp, Daniel Wright, sat on my couch like he owned the place. I'm Jackson Cole, 53 years old, 22 years in the Army, 3 tours in Afghanistan, 2 in Iraq. I came home with a Purple Heart, a Distinguished Service Cross, and a piece of shrapnel lodged 3 inches from my spine that the VA doctors said was too dangerous to remove. I also came home with something else, the absolute certainty that the man who saved my life in Kandahar 7 years ago would always have my back. I was wrong. Rebecca didn't even look at me when I walked in. She just kept folding sweaters into her suitcase, the same methodical way she used to fold my uniforms before deployment, precise, emotionless, final. Her hands moved with practiced efficiency, like she'd rehearsed this moment 1,000 times in her mind. Danny, though. Danny looked right at me. And you know what killed me? He didn't look guilty. He looked relieved, like a weight had been lifted, like he'd been waiting for this moment and was glad it had finally arrived. "Jack, we need to talk," he said, standing up from my couch wearing the University of Texas shirt I'd bought him for his birthday 2 years ago. The burnt orange looked faded now, washed too many times. "I think you've done enough talking," I managed to say. My voice sounded strange, hollow, like it was coming from somewhere far away, like I was underwater, and the words had to travel through miles of ocean to reach the surface. "This isn't how we wanted to tell you," Rebecca said, finally turning to face me. Her eyes were dry. That's what I remember most clearly. No tears. Just determination. Cold, clear determination. "But Danny and we've been seeing each other for 8 months now. And we're in love. 8 months. I did the math instantly, the way combat trained you to process information under pressure. That put it right around New Year's. Right after I'd gotten back from Walter Reed, where I'd spent 6 weeks learning to walk again after my 4th surgery. 6 weeks of physical therapy, relearning how to put one foot in front of the other like a toddler. Danny had driven Rebecca to visit me every weekend. 4-hour drive each way, 8 hours round trip, every weekend for 6 weeks. I'd thought he was being a good friend. "You were in the hospital," I said quietly, each word dropping like a stone into still water. "I was in the hospital fighting to walk again, and you were sleeping with my wife." Danny had the audacity to step toward me, hands out like he was approaching a spooked horse. "Brother, listen. I didn't plan this. Neither of us did. It just happened. These things, they just happen sometimes. You can't control who you fall in love with. It just happened." 4 words that were supposed to make 21 years of marriage and 15 years of brotherhood disappear like smoke. "Don't call me brother," I said, and my voice came out harder than I intended. "Brothers don't do this. Friends don't do this. Men with honor don't do this. Jack, please." Rebecca's voice cracked just slightly, the first sign of emotion I'd seen. "This hasn't been working for years, you know that. You've been gone more than you've been home. The kids barely know you. I've been alone for 2 decades while you played soldier." Played soldier. That's what she called it. Played. Like those 3 tours dodging IEDs and watching my men die were some kind of game. Like Corporal James Martinez bleeding out in my arms in Helmand Province was just pretend. Like the nightmares that still wake me up at 3 in the morning, sweating through my sheets, were just bad dreams. Like the tremor in my right hand that gets worse when I'm stressed was just a quirk. "Where are Sarah and Michael?" I asked, forcing myself to focus on what mattered. My kids. Our kids. 17 and 14. The 2 people in this world I'd thought were untouchable by any of this. "They're at my mother's," Rebecca said, tucking a strand of hair behind her ear in that way she'd done for 2 decades. "We thought it would be easier this way. Easier for everyone. Easier. Right. Easier for them not to watch their mother walk out with their father's best friend. Easier for me not to have to explain to my daughter why her mum chose Uncle Danny over her dad. Easier for my son not to see his hero fall apart. Easier for everyone except the guy who'd spent half his life in a uniform protecting the freedom that gave them the right to destroy him. "I need you to leave," I said to Danny, surprised by how calm I sounded. "Now. Right now. Jack, man, come on. Let's talk about this like adults, like reasonable adults. We can figure this out." "Like adults," I repeated, and something in my chest was cracking, breaking apart like ice under pressure. You want to talk about being an adult? Adults don't betray their friends. Adults don't sleep with their battle buddy's wife while he's getting metal pins drilled into his spine. Adults don't sit on another man's couch wearing a shirt he bought them while they steal his wife. You're being dramatic, Rebecca said, zipping her suitcase closed with a sharp sound that felt like punctuation on our marriage. I've already talked to a lawyer. You'll get the papers next week. I'm not asking for much. Just the house and half your pension. That's fair considering everything. Just the house and half my pension. The house I'd bought with my re-enlistment bonus after my first tour when Sarah was 3 and Michael was still in diapers. The pension I'd earned by bleeding for this country in deserts and mountains half a world away, by watching friends die, by killing people I'd never met in places whose names I couldn't pronounce. Just that. Fine, I heard myself say, like the words were coming from someone else. Take it. Take all of it. Just get out of my house. Danny grabbed Rebecca's suitcase, his fingers wrapping around the handle I'd carried through 3 airport terminals when we'd gone to Hawaii for our 15th anniversary. They headed for the door. At the threshold, he turned back, and in that moment, I saw a flicker of something. Guilt, maybe, or regret, or maybe just discomfort at the mess he'd created. For what it's worth, man, I'm sorry. You deserved better than this. Then he left, with my wife. In the Toyota 4Runner I'd co-signed for him 3 years ago when his credit was shot from a bad divorce. His first wife had left him for someone else too. I should have seen the pattern. I stood in that empty house for maybe 20 minutes just staring at the wall where our family photos used to hang. 21 years of memories condensed into rectangular shadows of dust where frames had protected the paint. Rebecca had taken those too. Every single photograph, like she wanted to erase the evidence that we'd ever been happy. Then I did what any logical person would do in that situation. I grabbed my keys and drove. Didn't have a destination, didn't have a plan. Just pointed my truck east and drove, watching the suburbs give way to desert, the houses getting farther apart until there was nothing but scrub brush and sand and mountains in the distance. I drove east on the 91, then north on the 215, watching the desert stretch out around me like a promise of emptiness. No people, no betrayal, no memories, just space. Somewhere near Barstow, about 90 miles from home, my truck started making a sound like a dying animal, a grinding metallic screech that came from deep in the engine. Perfect. Just perfect. Because of course this would happen today. Of course. I pulled into a rest stop, one of those desolate places with concrete picnic tables and vending machines that probably hadn't worked since the Clinton administration. The parking lot was mostly empty. A semi-truck on one side, an RV with Nevada plates on the other. I popped the hood and smoke billowed out, white and thick and smelling like burning rubber and antifreeze. I don't know much about engines. I can field strip an M4 blindfolded, can recognize the sound of different types of incoming fire, can perform field first aid that saved more lives than I can count. But cars, that's never been my thing. That was always Danny's thing. Danny the mechanic. Danny who helped me rebuild the engine in my first Mustang when we were 22 years old. Both of us covered in grease, drinking cheap beer and talking about the future like it was something we could control. Danny who'd just driven away with my entire life. You look like you could use some help. I turned. An old man stood there, maybe 75, maybe 80. Hard to tell. He wore faded Levi's that had seen 1,000 washes, a plain white shirt and a baseball cap with a USS Enterprise logo. Navy. I could tell by the way he stood, even at his age. Some things you never lose. That straight-backed bearing, that economy of movement, that way of watching your surroundings without appearing to watch. Radiators blown, I said, gesturing at the steaming engine. I could see that much at least. Green coolant everywhere, mixing with oil, creating a rainbow sheen on the concrete. That's fixable, he said, walking over with surprising steadiness. Name's Arthur Brennan. Retired Master Chief, 26 years, destroyers mostly. Saw action in Vietnam, Lebanon, Desert Storm. You? Jackson Cole, Sergeant First Class, 22, Infantry, Afghanistan and Iraq. Too many tours to count. We shook hands, and his grip was still strong. Iron-hard calluses, working man's hands, even in retirement. He looked at my truck, then at me, and something in his eyes shifted. Recognition, maybe, or understanding. The look one veteran gives another when they see the weight. You coming from somewhere or running from something? He asked, pulling off his cap and running a hand through white hair. I laughed. It came out bitter, harsh. Is it that obvious? I've seen that look before, son. On my own face about 40 years ago. My wife left me for my CO while I was on deployment. Came home to divorce papers and an empty house. Found out they'd been together for over a year. Everyone on base knew except me. That's the worst part, you know? Everyone knew. They all just decided not to tell me. I'm sorry, I said, and meant it. Even through my own pain, I could recognize his. Don't be. Best thing that ever happened to me, though I didn't know it at the time. Thought my life was over. Thought I'd never trust anyone again. He nodded toward a diner across the parking lot, a squat building with a neon sign that said, Sally's Coffee Shop. Your truck's not going anywhere tonight. Let me buy you coffee, and I'll tell you a story. Fair trade? I should call a tow truck. I should call my kids. I should call Rebecca's mother and find out if Sarah and Michael are okay. I should do a lot of things. But instead, I followed this stranger into a dusty diner that smelled like coffee and frying bacon and decades of accumulated grease from the fryers. We sat in a booth by the window. A waitress who looked like she'd been working there since the Nixon administration poured us coffee without asking, set down 2 stained mugs, and walked away without a word. The coffee was strong enough to strip paint, which was exactly what I needed. So, Arthur said, stirring sugar into his cup with methodical precision, you want to tell me what happened, or should I guess? Because I'm going to guess wife and best friend. Am I close? Something about him, about the way he asked without judgment or pity, made me talk. I told him everything. Rebecca, Danny, the 8 months, the lawyer, the house, the pension, the kids at Rebecca's mother's. All of it spilled out like I'd been holding it in for years instead of hours. Like I'd been waiting for someone, anyone, to ask the question, so I could finally give voice to the betrayal that was eating me alive from the inside out. When I finished, he just nodded slowly, like I'd confirmed something he already knew. And now you're wondering if any of it was worth it, he said quietly. The deployments, the injuries, the sacrifices. You're wondering if you gave the best years of your life to a country that can't even guarantee your wife will be faithful while you're fighting for it. You're wondering if you were a fool, if you should have stayed home, if you should have chosen differently. It was like he'd read my mind, like he'd been inside my head listening to every thought I'd had on the drive here. Something like that, I admitted, wrapping my hands around the warm mug. I felt the same way when Jennifer left, he said. 42 years old, decorated sailor, 3 combat tours, and I couldn't even keep my own wife happy. Couldn't provide her with whatever it was she needed. Spent about 6 months feeling sorry for myself. Drank too much. Stopped shaving. Stopped caring. Almost ate my gun once. He said it so casually, like he was describing a trip to the grocery store. Had it in my mouth, finger on the trigger. Then I heard something outside my window. Kid crying. He paused, took a sip of coffee. What happened? I asked. I put the gun down, went outside. It was maybe 2 in the morning. Found a kid, 12 years old, sitting in a car in the Walmart parking lot. Marcus was his name. He was living out of that car with his mom. I saw them through the window, both of them trying to sleep in bucket seats, and I thought, here I am drowning in self-pity, and this child doesn't even have a bed. What did you do? I talked to his mom. Single parent, veteran herself actually. Army. First Gulf War. Got hurt, couldn't work. VA benefits, got tangled up in red tape, lost everything. Job, house, savings, everything. I helped them get into transitional housing that night. Started volunteering at the VA the next day, helping other vets who were struggling. And you know what I discovered? What? That purpose isn't something you find. It's something you build. My wife leaving didn't take away my purpose. It just meant I had to build a new one. Build it from scratch. From nothing. The waitress refilled our coffee without being asked. Outside the sun was setting, painting the desert orange and purple and gold. Beautiful and indifferent. I'm not looking for purpose, I said. I just want my life back. Arthur leaned back, studying me with those sharp eyes. No, you don't. You want your old life back, the one you thought you had. But that life was built on a foundation of lies. Your wife was unhappy for years. Your friend was disloyal. Those are facts you couldn't see, because you were too busy being deployed, too busy serving, too busy being the hero for everyone except the people who needed you most. That's not fair, I said, feeling heat rise in my chest. I was serving my country, and that's honorable. Truly, I mean that. But Jackson, can I be honest with you? Really honest? I nodded, not sure I wanted to hear it, but knowing I needed to. Your wife didn't leave you because you were deployed. She left you because even when you were home, you weren't really there. Am I right? Even on leave, your mind was still in Afghanistan, still with your men, still fighting battles that were over, still preparing for the next deployment. Am I wrong? I wanted to argue, wanted to defend myself, but he wasn't wrong. Even on leave, my mind was always half in Afghanistan, always planning for the next deployment, always thinking about my men, my mission, my duty. Rebecca used to joke that I'd married the army first and her second. It stopped being funny around year 10. I just didn't realize she'd stopped joking. So, what do I do now? I asked, and heard the defeat in my own voice. Now? Arthur leaned forward. Now you rebuild. But this time you build something that can't be taken from you. Something that matters. Something that's yours. Like what? Arthur pulled out his wallet, extracted a business card, and slid it across the scarred table. It said Brennan Foundation in simple black letters, with an address in San Diego and a phone number. What's this? My second act, he said. After Jennifer left, after I got my head straight, after I stopped drinking and put the gun away for good, I started a foundation. We help homeless veterans get back on their feet. Housing, job training, mental health support, legal help with benefits claims. Everything I wish someone had done for Marcus's mom before she ended up in that parking lot with her kid. That's good work, I said, trying to hand the card back. He pushed it back toward me. I'm not showing you this to impress you, Jackson. I'm showing you this because I need help. I'm 78 years old. I've got congestive heart failure, diabetes, and the beginnings of kidney disease. I've got maybe 5 years left if I'm lucky, probably less if I'm honest. This foundation is my legacy, but I don't have anyone to leave it to. No kids, no family. My brother died 10 years ago. My sister hasn't spoken to me since our mother's funeral. Just the work. Just the mission. I don't understand, I said slowly. What are you asking? I'm asking if you want a job, come work with me. Learn the foundation. Learn how it runs, what it does, why it matters. Help me expand it. And when I'm gone, and I will be gone sooner than either of us wants, take it over. Run it. Make it bigger than I ever could. Make it matter more than I ever could. I stared at him across that scratched table. You don't even know me. Met me 20 minutes ago. I know you're a decorated soldier. I know you just had your life destroyed, and instead of getting drunk or doing something stupid, you're sitting here having coffee with an old man you don't know. I know you're the kind of person who signs up to serve even when it costs everything. Even when it costs your marriage, your friendships, your peace of mind. That tells me what I need to know about your character. I appreciate the offer, I said carefully. I really do, but I can't just leave. My kids are in Riverside, the divorce, everything. My whole life is there. Bring your kids, he said simply. San Diego's 2 hours away, not 2,000 miles. 2 hours. Let them see their father building something meaningful instead of drowning in bitterness. Show them what resilience looks like, what rebuilding looks like. And as for the divorce, let Rebecca have the house, let her have the pension. You'll have a salary with the foundation, $50,000 a year to start. Not much, but enough to rent a decent place. Enough to start over. Why are you doing this? I asked, searching his face for an angle, for the catch, for whatever made this make sense. Why do you care what happens to me? Because 40 years ago I was sitting in a diner just like this one, trying to figure out if I should keep living. And a stranger, an old Marine I'd never met before and never saw again, bought me coffee and told me that pain doesn't have to be the end of the story. It can be the beginning of a better one. He said that to me, and I've never forgotten it. I'm just paying it forward, son. That's all this is. Paying forward what someone did for me when I needed it most. We sat there in silence for a while. Outside, someone pulled into the rest stop, headlights cutting through the gathering dark. A family. I could see through the window. Mom, Dad, 2 kids. They looked happy. They looked whole. They looked like everything I'd just lost. I don't know anything about running a foundation, I said finally. Don't know the first thing about non-profits or grants or any of that. I didn't either when I started, Arthur said. 26 years in the Navy and they never once taught me how to write a grant proposal or manage a board of directors. You'll learn. You're smart. You're disciplined. You know how to lead. That's more than most people have. The rest is just details. Details we can figure out together. When would I start? Tomorrow, if you want. I'll have your truck towed to a shop in San Diego tonight. You can stay in my guest house while you get sorted. Tow strings, no obligations. If you hate it after a week, you can walk away. I'll pay to fix your truck and you can go back to Riverside. But Jackson, and listen to me when I say this, I think you need this as much as I need you. I thought about my empty house in Riverside. About Rebecca and Danny probably celebrating their freedom right now. Probably toasting with wine I'd bought. About my kids, who didn't even know yet that their family was broken, that their world had changed, that nothing would ever be the same. About the years I'd spent building a life that turned out to be built on sand. Okay, I said, and the word felt like jumping off a cliff. I'll try it for a week, just a week. Arthur smiled and it reached his eyes, transformed his whole face. Good man. Now let's get some real food. You look like you haven't eaten in days. When's the last time you had a meal that wasn't MRE quality? He was right. I hadn't eaten since breakfast. The breakfast where my life fell apart. That night, after Arthur called his roadside service and arranged for my truck, I followed his F-150 west toward San Diego. The sun had set completely by then, and the desert was just shapes and shadows in the darkness. My truck rode on a flatbed behind us, broken and useless, which felt appropriate somehow. Symbolic of something I didn't want to think about too hard. We reached his property around midnight. Property is too small a word for what it was. 15 acres in Rancho Santa Fe, one of those neighborhoods where the average house costs more than most people earn in a lifetime. The main house looked like something from an architectural magazine, all glass and modern lines and dramatic angles. And off to the side, connected by a covered walkway, was a guest house that was nicer than anywhere I'd ever lived. Make yourself at home, Arthur said, handing me keys on a leather fob. Fridge is stocked with basics. You'll find clothes in the closet that should fit. My son's clothes. He was about your size. We'll talk more in the morning. Sleep as late as you want. God knows you've earned it. You had a son. Arthur's face changed, closed off slightly. Daniel. He would have been 61 now. Car accident. Drunk driver. He was 26. That's part of why I do this work. Because I couldn't save my son, but maybe I can save someone else's. He walked away before I could respond, back toward the main house, and I stood there holding those keys, wondering what the hell I'd gotten myself into. The guest house had 2 bedrooms, a full kitchen, a living room with a fireplace and furniture that looked expensive and comfortable. Floor-to-ceiling windows overlooked grounds that probably looked beautiful in daylight. I dropped my bag and called Sarah, my daughter. She answered on the 3rd ring, her voice tight. Dad? Mom said you 2 are getting divorced. She said you know everything. Is it true? Yeah, sweetheart. It's true. We are. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry you have to deal with this. She was quiet for a moment. Is it because of Uncle Danny? Because I've seen the way they look at each other. I'm not stupid, Dad. I might be 17, but I'm not blind, you know. I've known for months, she said quietly. I didn't want to say anything because I thought maybe I was imagining it. Maybe I was seeing things that weren't there. But I wasn't, was I? No, honey, you weren't. You're more observant than your old dad. Where are you? I'm in San Diego. I met someone today who offered me a job. I'm going to try something new for a while. Get my head straight. Figure things out. Can we visit? Of course. Any time. I want you to visit. You and Michael both. How is your brother handling this? She sighed. He's angry. He locked himself in his room. Won't talk to anyone. Won't eat. Grandma's worried about him. He keeps saying he wants to talk to you. Can I talk to him? She put Michael on without another word. He didn't say anything at first, just breathed into the phone, and I could hear him trying not to cry. Hey, buddy, I said, keeping my voice steady. I know this is hard. Is it true, he asked, and his voice cracked in that way it had been doing lately, hovering between child and man. Did Uncle Danny really do that? Did he really steal Mom? He didn't steal her, Michael. She made a choice. A bad choice that hurt all of us. But she made it, they both did. I hate him. Michael's voice was hard in a way I'd never heard before. I hate both of them. I hope they're miserable. I hope they regret it forever. I understand that anger, I said. I feel it too. But Michael, listen to me. You can't let that anger eat you up inside. Trust me on this. I've seen what anger does to people, what bitterness does. Don't let them take your future along with everything else. Don't tell me how I feel, he said, voice rising. You weren't even here. You're never here. You're always gone. And now that we actually need you, where are you? San Diego. Not here. Never here when it matters. That hit harder than anything Rebecca had said, harder than Danny's betrayal. Because Michael was right. I hadn't been there enough. I'd chosen duty over family again and again, told myself it was noble, told myself it was necessary. And maybe it was. But it still cost me everything. You're right, I said, my own voice cracking now. I wasn't here enough. But I'm going to be now. Things are going to change, Michael, I promise you. I'm going to be better. Do better. Be the dad you deserve instead of the one who's always leaving. Everyone always promises, he said bitterly. Then they leave anyway. Then he hung up. I sat there holding the phone for a long time, staring at the screen, watching it go dark. Then I did something I hadn't done in years. Not since my father's funeral. Not since I'd watched them lower him into the ground with full military honors. I cried. Not the silent, controlled tears I'd shed at military funerals when my men died. Not the brief moment of weakness I'd allow myself in the shower where nobody could see. Real crying. The kind that comes from somewhere deep and doesn't stop until there's nothing left. The kind that hurts your chest and makes you gasp for air and leaves you empty and raw. When I finally pulled myself together, it was almost 2 a.m. I should have gone to sleep, should have let exhaustion take me, but I couldn't. My mind was racing, thoughts spinning like a centrifuge. So I did what I always do when my mind won't shut off, when the thoughts get too loud. I went for a run. The property had trails that wound through eucalyptus trees and opened onto views of the valley below. I ran in the darkness, no flashlight, just moonlight and instinct. Ran until my lungs burned and my legs screamed, until the only thing I could think about was putting one foot in front of the other, until everything else faded except the rhythm of my breathing and the impact of my feet on dirt. That's what they don't tell you about pain. Sometimes you have to exhaust yourself physically before you can find any peace mentally. When I got back, the sun was coming up, painting the eastern sky pink and gold. Arthur was sitting on the main house porch, coffee in hand, like he'd been waiting. "You're up early," he called as I approached, drenched in sweat. "Never stopped," I admitted, walking over. "Ran all night, couldn't sleep." He poured me coffee from a thermos. "Old habits," he said. "Navy'll do that to you. Can't sleep past 0500 even when I want to. Even when my body's screaming for rest. Even when I've got nowhere to be and nothing to do." We sat there in comfortable silence, watching the sunrise paint the valley gold and orange, watching the world wake up and pretend yesterday never happened. "So," Arthur said after a while, "you ready to see what we do? Ready to see what you just signed up for?" "I guess I am." He drove us to the Foundation headquarters in downtown San Diego in his F-150, and I watched the city wake up around us. Early morning joggers, people walking dogs, coffee shops opening their doors, normal people living normal lives, unaware that someone else's world had just exploded. The Foundation wasn't what I expected. Not some fancy office building with marble lobbies and suits everywhere. Instead, it was a converted warehouse near the waterfront, in a neighborhood that was somewhere between industrial and gentrifying. Inside, it was organized chaos. Volunteers sorting donations into neat piles, veterans filling out paperwork at folding tables, a woman leading a group therapy session in one corner, her voice low and steady, a man teaching job interview skills to a small group. Everything happening at once, controlled chaos with purpose. "This is it," Arthur said, spreading his arms. "We help about 200 vets a month. Housing assistance, job placement, mental health services, legal aid for benefits claims that got denied or tangled up in bureaucracy. Whatever they need, if we can provide it, we do. If we can't, we find someone who can. How many people work here full-time?" 4, he said. "Lisa runs programs. Carlos handles job training. Jennifer does housing placements. And Maria manages the money. Makes sure we can keep the doors open. Rest are volunteers. About 40 regular volunteers and maybe another 20 who come when they can. And before you ask, yes, we're always understaffed and underfunded. Non-profit work is glamorous like that." He introduced me to everyone. Lisa, the director of programs, was a former Army medic, early 40s, with kind eyes and no-nonsense efficiency. Carlos, who ran job training, was a Marine Corps veteran, tattoos covering both arms, a scar across his left cheek from IED shrapnel. Jennifer handled housing placements and had never served, but her son had died in Fallujah in 2005, and she'd spent the last 18 years making sure other veterans didn't fall through the cracks. Maria, the office manager, was Navy, like Arthur, and ran the financial side with precision that would make an accountant weep with joy. Everyone had a story. Everyone had a reason for being there beyond a paycheck. Everyone had chosen this work instead of easier options. "I want you to shadow Lisa today," Arthur said. "See how intake works. Talk to the vets coming through. Just listen and learn. Don't try to help yet. Don't try to fix anything. Just observe. Watch. Learn. Understand." I spent the next 8 hours listening to stories that made my own problems feel small, feel petty, feel manageable. A guy my age, Marcus Williams, who'd been homeless for 3 years after a bad discharge. He'd punched a sergeant who'd been harassing him, got a dishonorable discharge, lost his benefits, his future, everything. A woman named Patricia Rodriguez, who'd served in Desert Storm and now couldn't hold a job because of untreated PTSD. She'd wake up screaming, have panic attacks in crowded places, couldn't function. A kid barely 21, Tyler Johnson, who'd done one tour in Syria and came back to find his family had moved without telling him where. Just gone. No forwarding address. No note. Nothing. Every single one of them had been betrayed by someone or something. The military, the VA, their families, their own minds, themselves. And every single one of them was trying to rebuild, trying to find a way forward when the path behind them had been destroyed. By the end of the day, I was exhausted in a way that had nothing to do with physical work, emotionally drained, spiritually empty, but also, strangely, energized, like I'd found something I didn't know I was looking for. "So," Arthur said when I found him in his office at 5 o'clock, "what do you think?" "I think there are too many of them," I said, collapsing into a chair. "Too many people falling through the cracks. Too many people that the system failed." "Yep." He leaned back in his chair, hands behind his head. "And we can't save them all. We don't have the resources, don't have the money or the staff or the time. But we save the ones we can, and we hope they go on to help others. It's ripples, Jackson. We throw stones in the water and hope the ripples reach the shore. Hope they keep spreading long after we're gone." "I want to learn more," I said, "about all of it. How it works, how you fund it, how you decide who to help when you can't help everyone, how you live with that." "Good," Arthur smiled, "because starting Monday, you're the new deputy director. Salary's $50,000 a year, health insurance included. Hours are terrible, and the coffee's worse, but the work matters. You in?" "I'm in." That was 9 months ago, 9 months that changed everything. The divorce went through in January. I sat in a conference room at Rebecca's lawyer's office, signing papers that ended 21 years of marriage. She sat across from me, Danny next to her, his hand on her knee possessively. That part hurt more than I expected. Not seeing them together, but realizing she needed him there for moral support. Like I was the threat. Like I was the one who'd broken sacred trust. The lawyer, a woman named Patricia Chen, no relation to Arthur, pushed papers across the table with mechanical efficiency. Rebecca got the house in Riverside. Fair market value, $470,000. I got my truck, now repaired, which was worth maybe $8,000 on a good day. She got half my military pension, which worked out to about $900 a month for life. I kept my VA disability payments, which was $1,100 a month for the shrapnel and the back issues, and my salary from the foundation. "Do you have any questions about the settlement, Mr. Cole?" Patricia asked, her voice professionally neutral. "No," I said, signing the last page without reading it. "I just want this over with, just want to close this chapter and move on." Rebecca finally looked at me then, really looked at me for the first time in months. "Jack, I want you to know this wasn't easy for me either. This decision, leaving you, it was hard." I set down the pen carefully, precisely. "Wasn't easy for you. Rebecca, you had 8 months to prepare for this conversation. 8 months to decide. 8 months to plan your exit. I had one Thursday afternoon. Don't talk to me about easy." "That's not fair," Danny said, speaking for the first time, his voice defensive. I held up my hand. You don't get to talk. Not here. Not ever. You gave up that right when you decided my wife was more important than our friendship. He opened his mouth to argue, but Rebecca put her hand on his arm. It's fine, she said quietly. Let's just finish this. Sign the papers and be done. We signed the rest in silence. When it was done, Patricia stood and shook my hand with professional firmness. Good luck to you, Mr. Cole. Thank you for your service. It was the kind of thing people say automatically, reflexively, but coming right after signing away my marriage, it felt hollow, empty. My service hadn't protected my family, hadn't kept my wife faithful, hadn't stopped my best friend from betraying me. What good was a Purple Heart when you came home to an empty house? What good was a Distinguished Service Cross when the people you loved most chose someone else? I walked out of that building and sat in my truck for 20 minutes, just breathing, in and out, focusing on the simplest biological function. Then I called Sarah. It's done, I said when she answered, keeping my voice level. How do you feel? She asked, and I could hear concern in her voice. Honestly? Empty, but also relieved. Does that make sense? I feel like I should be more upset than I am. Yeah, Dad, it does. Makes perfect sense. Sarah paused. Mom's moving Danny into the house this weekend. Officially. Just thought you should know. Thought you should hear it from me instead of finding out some other way. That fast? She's been planning it for a while, I think. She bought new furniture, new sheets, new towels, new everything. Like she's erasing you. Starting fresh. Like you were never there at all. I closed my eyes, leaned my head against the steering wheel. How are you handling all this, sweetheart? You and Michael, how are you both really doing? I'm okay. Therapy helps. The therapist you found is good. But Michael, he's struggling. Still not talking to Mom. Won't even look at Danny. Grandma's worried about him. Says he's angry all the time. Gets into fights at school. His grades are dropping. He's not himself. Can I pick you guys up Friday? Take you to San Diego for the weekend, show you around more? We'd like that, she said, and I heard relief in her voice. Michael especially. He needs to get out of here. Needs to see you. Needs to know you're okay. That Friday, I drove to Riverside and picked up my kids from Rebecca's mother's house. Margaret had always liked me, had always treated me like a son, and the disapproval in her eyes when she looked at Rebecca's situation was obvious and undisguised. She made a terrible mistake, Margaret whispered fiercely when Rebecca wasn't in earshot, when she'd gone upstairs. I told her that. Told her she was throwing away something precious. But she won't listen. Never has listened to me. It's done now, I said gently. Water under the bridge. I just want to focus on the kids. Focus on being present for them in a way I wasn't before. You're a good man, Jackson Cole. Too good for what she did to you. Michael barely spoke during the 2-hour drive to San Diego. He sat in the back seat, headphones on, staring out the window at passing landscape. Sarah tried to fill the silence with talk about school, her friends, her plans for college, anything to avoid the elephant in the car, the giant unspoken truth of our broken family. When we got to Rancho Santa Fe, Michael finally took off his headphones and looked around, really looked for the first time. This is where you live now, he asked, staring at the property with wide eyes. This is real. For now, I said. It belongs to the foundation, but I manage it. Live here as part of my compensation. It's beautiful, Sarah said, already climbing out of the truck. Can we see those trails you mentioned, the ones you run on? We spent that afternoon hiking the property together. I showed them the grove of eucalyptus trees where I ran every morning at dawn, the koi pond where Arthur and I used to sit and talk about life and death and meaning, the view from the ridge that stretched all the way to the ocean on clear days, where you could see the curve of the earth. Michael was quiet until we reached the highest point of the property. Then he suddenly stopped walking, turned to face me, and I saw tears on his cheeks, cutting tracks through the dust from the trail. I'm sorry I said you're never here, he said, voice breaking. Sorry I blamed you. You were doing your job, being a soldier, being who you're supposed to be. It wasn't fair of me to be angry at you for that. I stopped walking, turned to face him fully. Buddy, you don't have to apologize. What you said was true. I wasn't there enough. That's on me, not you. No, I do have to apologize. He wiped at his eyes roughly. I was mad at you because it was easier than being mad at Mom. But you didn't do anything wrong. She did. And Uncle Danny. They're the ones who broke everything. Had I said mean things to you when you were the only one who was actually honest with me? I pulled him into a hug, and he actually let me, actually held on. At 14, he usually pulled away, too cool for affection, too grown up for dad hugs. But not that day. That day he held on like he was drowning and I was the only solid thing in a churning ocean. We're going to be okay, I promised, feeling Sarah join the hug from the other side. All three of us. It's going to take time, but we'll figure it out. We'll build something new together. That weekend changed something between us. I introduced them to the foundation, showed them the work. Sarah immediately connected with Lisa, asked a million questions about social work and helping veterans and making a difference. She talked about changing her college plans, about studying social work instead of business. Michael was quieter, more reserved, but I caught him talking to Carlos about the job training program, about teaching skills, about helping people rebuild. On Sunday, before I drove them back to Riverside, Sarah said something that stopped me cold. "Dad, can we move here? With you? Permanently? What about school? Your friends? Your whole lives are in Riverside. I can transfer," she said immediately, like she'd been thinking about this for a while. And honestly, most of my friends have been weird about the divorce anyway. Like they don't know what to say to me, like I'm damaged now, like my family's failure is contagious. Plus, UC San Diego has a really good social work program. I could do community college here for 2 years, establish residency, then transfer, save money too. And you, Michael, what do you think? I want your honest opinion. He shrugged, but I saw hope in his eyes for the first time in months. Better than living in a house where Uncle Danny pretends he's our new dad, where Mom acts like everything's normal, where they expect us to just forget what happened and be happy for them. "Let me talk to your mom," I said carefully. "See what we can work out. See if she'll agree to joint custody with you primarily living here." That conversation with Rebecca was brutal. She accused me of trying to steal the kids, of manipulating them, of turning them against her. Said I was being vindictive, trying to punish her for being happy. But eventually she agreed to joint custody with them, living primarily with me. I think she was relieved, honestly. Having 2 teenagers around cramped her new life with Danny, made it harder to pretend everything was perfect. So in February, Sarah and Michael moved into the guest house with me. We turned 1 bedroom into Sarah's space, painted it the color she wanted, let her decorate however she chose. Gave Michael the other bedroom. I slept on a pull-out couch in the living room and told myself it was temporary, that we'd figure something better out eventually. But living with my kids again, really living with them day to day, changed everything. I learned things about them I'd never known. That Sarah stress-baked when she was anxious about exams, and the kitchen would smell like chocolate chip cookies at midnight. That Michael was teaching himself guitar on YouTube at 2 in the morning when he couldn't sleep, his fingers clumsy on the strings. That they both missed me more than I'd realized during all those deployments, all those years when I chose duty over family. We developed routines, rhythms, the small rituals that make a family. Saturday morning hikes on the property trails, Sunday breakfast at this diner in Del Mar that served pancakes bigger than your head, fluffy and perfect. Wednesday night was movie night, and we took turns picking. Michael always chose action movies, things with explosions and car chases. Sarah loved documentaries, especially ones about social justice and inequality. I discovered I actually enjoyed romantic comedies, which surprised all 3 of us and became a running joke. The foundation work intensified as winter turned to spring. Arthur's death had made local news, and donations flooded in. People who'd known him, veterans he'd helped years ago, wealthy benefactors moved by his story of turning personal tragedy into public good. We went from operating on a shoestring budget to actually having resources, having options, having the ability to say yes instead of sorry. I hired 3 new case managers, expanded our mental health services to include evening hours and weekend crisis support, started a program specifically for women veterans who faced unique challenges coming home that the male-dominated VA system often ignored or minimized. Lisa suggested we add a family support component, helping military families navigate the challenges of reintegration, and we brought on a therapist who specialized in exactly that work. Every day brought new stories, new veterans who needed help, new chances to make a difference, and every day I thought about Arthur. Wondered if he was watching somehow. Wondered if he was proud of what we were building on the foundation he'd laid. Then, in March, on a Tuesday morning that started like any other, Arthur collapsed in his office. I was the one who found him. I'd knocked on his door around 9:30, carrying coffee and the grant application we'd been working on for the past week. When he didn't answer, which was unusual because Arthur was always prompt, always responsive, I pushed it open. He was on the floor behind his desk, face down, one arm stretched out like he'd been reaching for the phone. "Arthur." I dropped the coffee, didn't even hear it shatter. "Arthur." I rolled him over. His eyes were open but unfocused, staring at nothing. No pulse when I checked his neck. Skin already cooling. I started CPR immediately, counted compressions the way they'd trained us in the army. 30 compressions, 2 breaths, over and over, while Lisa called 911 from the doorway, her voice shaking. The paramedics arrived in 7 minutes. They worked on him for 20 more, shocking his heart, pushing medications, trying everything. But I knew. I'd seen enough death in combat to recognize it. Arthur was gone before he hit the floor. Brain aneurysm, the ER doctor told me later, once we'd arrived at the hospital in the ambulance that carried his body. Massive. Catastrophic. He wouldn't have suffered, wouldn't have felt pain. Just darkness, and then nothing. That was supposed to be comforting, I guess. But all I could think about was that Arthur died alone in his office, reaching for a phone, and I'd been 30 feet away laughing with Carlos about something stupid and irrelevant. If I'd checked on him 5 minutes earlier, could I have saved him? Could I have called 911 sooner? Could I have at least been there so he didn't die alone? Janet took it the hardest. She'd worked for Arthur for 30 years, longer than most marriages last, longer than most friendships survive. She sat in the hospital waiting room, stone-faced and silent, while the doctors explained what had happened, used words like cerebral hemorrhage and catastrophic bleed and incompatible with life. When they left, she finally spoke. "He knew," she said quietly, staring at her hands. "He told me last week that everything was in order. His will, his instructions, funeral arrangements, everything. He said he was ready, said he'd lived a full life and had no regrets. I thought he was just being morbid, you know? He did that sometimes, especially after Elena died, but he knew. Somehow he knew his time was close." "How could he know?" I asked, even though I knew soldiers who'd had the same premonition before missions they didn't come back from. She looked at me with red-rimmed eyes. "He didn't. Not specifically. But Arthur always planned for everything, even his own death, especially his own death. That was just who he was. That man who prepared for every contingency." The funeral was on a Saturday. We held it at a church in La Jolla, a beautiful old building with stained glass, but it wasn't big enough. People spilled out into the parking lot, onto the street, blocking traffic. Veterans of every generation showed up. Korea vets in their 90s, barely able to stand but standing anyway. Vietnam vets in motorcycle club leather, grey ponytails and hard eyes. Desert Storm, Iraq, Afghanistan. The conflicts changed, but the respect was universal. I gave the eulogy, stood at that podium and looked out at hundreds of faces and tried to find words that would capture who Arthur Brennan had been. How do you summarize a man who'd saved lives for 40 years, who'd turned his own pain into purpose for others, who'd taken a stranger's misery and transformed it into meaning? Arthur Brennan found me at my lowest point, I began, and my voice cracked immediately. I was sitting in a rest stop parking lot, my truck broken down, my marriage over, my life in pieces. He bought me coffee and offered me hope. Not empty hope, not false promises, real hope. The kind that comes with responsibility and hard work, and the chance to build something meaningful. I paused, gathered myself. He didn't do it because he pitied me. He did it because he saw something I couldn't see in myself. He saw past the broken parts, past the anger and the bitterness and the defeat, to the person I could become if someone just gave me a chance. And in the 9 months I knew him, he taught me that betrayal doesn't have to define you. That pain can make you better instead of bitter. That family isn't who shares your blood, but who shares your mission, your purpose, your commitment to making the world better. I saw heads nodding throughout the church. Veterans who understood. Who'd been where I'd been. Who'd felt what I'd felt. Arthur Brennan spent his last years making sure veterans didn't fall through the cracks. He spent his fortune, his time, his energy making sure they had housing and jobs and support. He spent his days making sure they knew someone cared, that someone was fighting for them, and now it's our job to continue what he started, to throw stones in the water and hope the ripples reach the shore. That's what he would want. Not tears, not grief. Just the work, always the work. The mission continues. When I finished, veterans lined up to tell their stories. They came one after another, an endless stream of lives touched and changed. A man who'd been homeless for a decade until Arthur's foundation got him housing and job training. A woman who'd been denied benefits for years until Arthur connected her with legal aid that fought her case. A kid barely 20 who said Arthur had saved his life literally, talked him out of suicide the night before he planned to do it. Spent 3 hours on the phone with a stranger just because he cared. Story after story, life after life, all touched by one man who'd chosen to build instead of break after his own tragedy. We buried him next to his wife Eleanor in a veterans cemetery overlooking the Pacific Ocean. The honor guard folded the flag with precision that comes from doing something 1,000 times, each movement exact and reverent. The 21-gun salute echoed across the hills, 7 rifles firing 3 times. Taps played, that haunting melody that's marked military funerals for over 150 years, and I wasn't the only one crying. Janet gave me Arthur's flag afterward, pressed it into my hands with both of hers. "He wanted you to have this," she said, her voice steady despite the tears. "He told me 2 weeks ago, when the time comes, give it to Jackson. He's earned it." Those were his exact words. He's earned it. I held that folded flag and felt the weight of it. Not the physical weight, which was barely anything. The weight of responsibility, of legacy, of everything Arthur had built and was now trusting me to carry forward. The weight of promise. The will reading was held a week later at the offices of Patterson, Morris & Brennan, a law firm in downtown San Diego that occupied 3 floors of a glass tower overlooking the bay. The waiting room had leather chairs and original art on the walls, the kind of place that charged $500 an hour just to breathe their air. I arrived 15 minutes early, wearing the only suit I owned, the one I'd bought for my father's funeral 8 years ago. It was tight in the shoulders now. All the trail running and foundation work had changed my build, added muscle where there hadn't been before. Arthur's lawyer, Alexander Patterson, was a dignified man in his 70s who'd known Arthur for 40 years, since the early days when the foundation was just an idea scribbled on napkins. He explained the various bequests with methodical precision, generous donations to multiple hospitals, funding for medical scholarships in Daniel's name, a trust for Janet that would keep her comfortable for the rest of her life, smaller bequests to various charities and causes Arthur had supported. "And now we come to the primary estate," Alexander said, looking at me over his reading glasses. "The house in Rancho Santa Fe, the foundation itself, the business holdings, the remaining investment portfolio valued at approximately $850,000, and controlling interest in several properties that house our operations. Mr. Brennan has bequeathed everything in its entirety to Thomas Jackson Cole." The silence in the room was absolute. I stared at him, unable to process what I'd just heard. "I'm sorry, what?" "Everything, Jackson. The foundation is yours. The property is yours. The money is yours. Arthur wanted you to have it all. He was very clear about that." I couldn't breathe. Why? Why would he do that? Alexander pulled out an envelope, Arthur's handwriting on the front. "He left you this letter. He asked me to read it aloud if you questioned his decision. Would you like me to do that?" I nodded, unable to speak. Alexander opened the envelope and began to read in Arthur's voice, as if he was still in the room with us. "Jackson, if you're hearing this, I'm dead. Hopefully it was quick and I didn't linger, didn't become a burden on anyone. I'm not good at being vulnerable, so I'll keep this brief. You probably think I gave you this foundation out of pity or charity, or some misguided sense of obligation. You'd be wrong. I gave it to you because in 9 months, you proved something most people never do in a lifetime. That pain can make you better instead of bitter. You could have spent these months destroying yourself over your wife and your friend. Instead, you showed up every day and helped me save 87 veterans from homelessness and hopelessness. 87 lives that might have been lost. That's who you are, Jackson. Not a man who was betrayed, not a victim. A man who chooses to build even when he has every reason to burn it all down. Run this foundation better than I did. Grow it. Help more people. Expand the mission. And Jackson, do me one more favor. Don't die alone like I almost did. Let people in. Let your kids in all the way. Let yourself be happy. You've earned it. The work matters, but so do you. Remember that. The mission is important, but you're not just the mission. You're a father, a friend, a human being. Be all of those things. Semper Fi to a fellow warrior who never stopped serving. Arthur. The letter ended. Alexander set it down carefully and looked at me with kind eyes. He meant every word, Jackson. He talked about you constantly in those last weeks, said you were the son he'd lost, the legacy he'd always wanted. You gave him purpose in his final months. You gave him joy. That's worth more than anything in that will. I sat there and cried for what felt like the 100th time in 9 months, not because Arthur died. He'd lived a full life and gone out on his terms. I cried because a man I'd known for less than a year had seen something in me that my wife of 21 years never did. He saw past the broken parts to something worth saving, something worth investing in, something worth building a legacy around. The next day, I called a staff meeting. 23 people showed up, including volunteers who'd heard the news. Everyone looked nervous. Organizations don't usually survive their founders. The statistics are grim. I know you're worried, I started, standing in the main room where we did intake. Arthur was the foundation. He was the vision, the drive, the heart of everything we do. How do we go on without him? And I'll be honest, I don't know. I'm not Arthur. I don't have his 40 years of experience, or his connections, or his wisdom, or his natural charisma. I paused, looked at their faces. What I have is what he gave me. A belief that this work matters, a commitment to continuing what he started, and the knowledge that we can do this together, that we're stronger together than any of us could be alone. Arthur left enough funding to open 2 more locations, one in Los Angeles, one in Riverside. We're going to help twice as many veterans by this time next year. That's how we honor him. We do the work bigger and better. We expand the mission. We save more lives. The room was quiet for a moment that stretched too long. Then Carlos started clapping. Then Lisa. Then Jennifer. Then everyone, and the sound filled the warehouse like thunder. That was 6 months ago. We opened the LA location last month in a renovated building in East Los Angeles. Riverside opens next week in a former community center. We're helping 437 veterans a month now, 437 lives that might have been lost, 437 second chances. Sarah decided to enroll at San Diego State to study social work. She wants to work at the foundation after she graduates, wants to help military families navigate the chaos of reintegration. She volunteers 3 days a week now, and veterans love her. She has her mother's organizational skills and my patience, and it's a powerful combination. Michael's doing better too, thriving actually. He joined the debate team at his new school, talks about becoming a JAG lawyer when he grows up. He told me last week that he wants to help veterans with benefits claims, wants to fight the VA bureaucracy that fails so many. I about lost it when he said that, had to turn away so he wouldn't see me cry. Rebecca and Danny got married last month. Small ceremony at the courthouse. I didn't go, obviously, though I was invited. Polite invitation, the kind you send when you know it will be declined. But I also didn't feel the rage I thought I would. Mostly I felt grateful. Grateful that Arthur found me when he did. Grateful that my kids are in my life completely now. Grateful that I get to do work that matters, that changes lives, that gives meaning to my own life. Last week, a vet came through intake. 55 years old, Vietnam, homeless for 6 years. His story broke my heart into pieces. His wife had left him for his brother while he was on his 3rd tour. Came home to nothing. Empty house. Divorce papers. Bank account cleaned out. Couldn't hold a job because of PTSD that no one would treat. Lost everything. Ended up on the streets. His name was Raymond Martinez. I sat with him for 2 hours in my office. Told him my story. Told him Arthur's story. Told him that the end of one life could be the beginning of a better one if he was willing to do the work. Willing to fight for himself the way he'd fought for his country. Today, Raymond moved into transitional housing. He starts a job training program on Monday. He cried when I helped him carry his stuff into his new place. Said it was the first time in 6 years someone had treated him like he mattered, like he was worth saving, like he was still a human being with dignity and value. That's what this work is. Reminding people they matter when the world's told them they don't. Showing them that one betrayal, one tragedy, one disaster doesn't define their entire existence. That they can rebuild. That they're worth rebuilding. I still think about Danny sometimes. Wonder if he feels guilty. If he ever thinks about the day in Kandahar when he dragged me behind cover while rounds were snapping overhead. When he saved my life and I saved his. If he remembers that I gave the eulogy at his father's funeral when we were 26, stood up there and talked about what a great man his father had been, if any of it meant anything to him, if our friendship was ever real or just convenient. But mostly, I don't think about him, because I learned something these past 15 months. Betrayal only destroys you if you let it define you. You can choose to be the victim of your story or the hero who overcomes it. Arthur chose to overcome after Jennifer left him, and he showed me I could too. Showed me that pain is a choice, not the pain itself, but what you do with it, whether you let it make you bitter or better. The foundation is my family now. The vets we help, the staff who show up every day even though we could all make more money elsewhere, the volunteers who believe in the mission enough to give their time for free. That's my tribe. That's who has my back. That's who I trust. And you know what the crazy thing is? I'm happier now than I ever was when I thought I had everything. The big house in Riverside, the marriage I thought was solid, the best friend I thought I could trust. All of it was built on sand, on foundations that looked solid but crumbled the moment any pressure was applied. This, the work, the purpose, the mission, this is built on bedrock. This can't be taken away by someone's choice. This is mine because I built it, because I choose it every day, because I show up and do the work. 2 days ago, I got a call from Danny. First time since the divorce was final. He found the Foundation's website, saw my name as executive director, saw the articles about our expansion, said he wanted to apologize in person, said Rebecca left him for someone else she met at work, and now he understood how I felt. Said he was sorry and could we talk, maybe grab coffee, maybe try to rebuild what we'd destroyed. I thought about it for a long time. Part of me wanted to tell him to go to hell, to feel the same pain he'd inflicted on me. Part of me wanted to gloat, to say I told you so, to point out that karma is real and he was getting exactly what he deserved. But mostly I thought about Arthur, about second chances, about being the kind of man who helps people even when they don't deserve it, even when they've hurt you, even when every instinct says to turn away. So I said yes. We're meeting next week at that same diner where Arthur bought me coffee 15 months ago. I don't know if I can forgive him. I don't even know if I want to, but I'll listen, because that's what Arthur would have done, because that's who I want to be. Not someone who holds grudges, not someone who lets bitterness poison them. Someone who gives second chances, because I was given one when I needed it most. My name is Jackson Cole. I'm 53 years old. I'm a war veteran, a divorced father, and the executive director of the Brennan Foundation, an organization that helps broken people put their lives back together. I was betrayed by the two people I trusted most in the world, and it was the best thing that ever happened to me, because it led me here, to work that matters, to a life with meaning, to the understanding that family isn't who you're born with or who you marry. Family is who shows up, who sees you at your worst and believes in your best, who gives you a chance when you don't deserve one and expects you to pay it forward. Arthur Brennan was my family. The veterans we help are my family. My kids, who forgave me for not being there enough, are my family. And maybe, if I can find it in myself, if I can tap into the better angels of my nature, Danny can have a second chance too. Not because he deserves it, but because second chances are what we do. It's who we are. It's the mission Arthur gave me, and I'm going to honor it even when it's hard, even when it hurts, even when everything in me wants to choose bitterness over grace. That's what I've learned in these 15 months. That betrayal and pain aren't the end of the story. They're just the middle. The hard part where the hero has to decide what kind of person they'll be. The part where you choose your character. I chose to be someone who builds instead of destroys. Someone who helps instead of harms. Someone who believes that no matter how far you fall, no matter how broken you become, you can always get back up if someone's willing to extend a hand. If someone's willing to meet you in a diner and buy you coffee and tell you that pain doesn't have to be the end. Arthur extended his hand to me. Now I extend mine to others. And someday maybe the people we help will extend their hands too. Ripples, like Arthur said. Stones thrown in water, hoping they reach the shore, hoping they keep spreading long after we're gone. I don't know if Rebecca ever thinks about me. I don't know if she's happy with the choice she made. I don't know if she regrets leaving, if she wishes she could take it back, if she realizes what she lost. And honestly, I don't care anymore. She gave me an unexpected gift, a brutal gift wrapped in betrayal and pain. She freed me to become the man I was supposed to be all along. So if you're listening to this, if you're reading this, if you've been betrayed, if someone you trusted destroyed your life, if you're sitting in a parking lot somewhere wondering if it's worth going on, I want you to hear me. It gets better. Not immediately, not easily, not magically. But it does get better if you choose to make it better. Find your Arthur. Find your purpose. Build something that matters. Build something that can't be taken away by someone else's choices. And remember that the worst day of your life might just be the first day of your real life. The life you were always meant to live, the life you were always capable of living, if only you'd been pushed hard enough to discover it. That's my story. That's how I went from standing in my living room watching my wife leave with my best friend to running a foundation that changes lives every single day. It wasn't the path I planned. It wasn't the journey I wanted. But it's the path I needed. The journey that made me who I am today. And I wouldn't change a single thing, not the betrayal, not the pain, not the broken truck in the Barstow rest stop, not a single moment. Because every moment led me here, to this work, to this purpose, to this life that matters in ways my old life never did. This is who I am now. This is who I choose to be. A builder, a helper, a man who believes in second chances because I was given one. And if you need a second chance, if you're a veteran who's fallen through the cracks, who's lost everything, who's sitting somewhere wondering if anyone gives a damn, I want you to know, we give a damn. The Brennan Foundation gives a damn. I give a damn. Arthur gave a damn, and his legacy continues. You matter. Your service mattered, your sacrifice mattered, and your future can matter too if you're willing to let someone help you build it. That's the message. That's the mission. That's what Arthur taught me, and it's what I'm spending the rest of my life teaching others. We all deserve second chances. We all deserve to rebuild. We all deserve to matter. Every single one of us.